Okay, ready for cake? Okay, so this cake is really, really, really easy. You can literally make it in 5 minutes from start to finish. It's a flourless chocolate cake, and I'm going to be using walnuts as my flour. There's just some very simple substitutions in raw desserts, and basically, you know, what we're going to do, we're not going to take away the fat and the sugar, because that's what makes food taste good. What we're going to do is use different kinds of fat and sugar. So like with the fat, instead of using butter, you know, cream, all of that, you'll find that a lot of raw desserts use either nuts or avocados, and that's going to get the buttery taste or the creamy texture. Instead of using sugar, you'll find a lot of raw desserts use dried fruits like dates. That's going to give you the sweetness but without the refined white sugar. So those are just a couple of basic substitutions. So in this recipe, walnuts are going to take the place of both the flour and the butter. This is going to be the floury, buttery base of the cake. Now, for this cake, I didn't soak these walnuts. I know most of my recipes call for soaked nuts if you're using nuts. But with certain recipes like desserts, you don't want that soggy. It would be kind of a soggy texture if they were soaked. I want it to be really crumbly. So even though, yes, it's true that soaked nuts are a little bit more nutritious, I'm not really looking to my dessert to get me my enzymes and, you know, my nutrition. I'm going to have juice for that, so I'm not so concerned with it. There are some more gourmet recipes where you'll see soak the nuts and then dehydrate them, but that's pretty complicated. So I just use unsoaked nuts when I need, you know, the unsoaked texture, and then I use soaked ones when I need the soaked texture. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to use a food processor for this. You can't use a blender for this cake because that would puree it too much. We want it to be a crumbly texture. So this is a Cuisinart brand food processor, but you could also use, it's more expensive, but it's a great food processor. You could also use a Hamilton Beach food processor, which you can get at Target, and it's like $30, a lot less expensive. So we'll go ahead and add the walnuts here. Okay. And then I'm just going to add a pinch of salt. That's just going to give it more of a kind of a buttery taste. And I'm just going to go ahead and process that until it is like a coarse flour. Oh, yeah, and this recipe is in my book, but I'm making a larger amount right now for you. So, I mean, I'm using different amounts, just I'm making enough to feed everybody. Okay, so we've got just a coarse flour out of that. So now what I'm going to do is add some dates. And a date is a kind of dried fruit, and I'm going to be using medjool dates, which is a variety of date that's very soft and sweet. And it's also larger than other kinds of dates, so I don't need to pit as many of them. It's just easier because they're large and they're really soft and sweet. And wait a minute, I've got two. There we go. And so to pit them, all I did was just pull them in half and just remove the pit. Sometimes you can find dates that are already pitted, but they tend to be a little dried out. So it just takes a minute. I like to just remove the pit myself. And what these dates are going to do is they're going to sweeten the cake, and they're also going to make it stick together. So they're going to kind of replace the eggs as well as the sweetener and make everything stick together too. So I'm going to go ahead and add some of these. I'm not going to add all these. Add some of these. Just enough to sweeten it and get it to stick together. Do that. Okay. And then I'll go process that, and just until the dates are kind of broken down a little bit. Oops. There we go. Okay, let me just make sure that it's kind of full here. There we go. Okay, so that is good. That's kind of broken down. Just another couple seconds here. All right. Okay, so now we need to turn this into chocolate cake. And when it comes to the chocolate, you have a few different options. If you don't want to use chocolate, because maybe you're avoiding the caffeine, you could use carob powder. And carob is a legume, and they dry it, and it's naturally sweet. And it doesn't really taste like chocolate, but it looks like chocolate, and it has a nice, pleasing flavor. And it's actually sweet. It's not bitter the way that chocolate is, so you don't need to use quite as many dates, you know, because it's sweet. So carob is delicious in this. But if you want to use chocolate, you've got a couple of options. If you want it to be raw, you can now pretty readily available, like in Berkeley Bowl, Whole Foods. You can get raw chocolate powder. It's also called raw cacao powder. And it's just made from cocoa or cacao beans that have not been roasted. That's all. And it doesn't have fat in it. They take away the cocoa butter when they process it. So it's just the dried cocoa bean, but without the cocoa butter fat part of it. So you can use raw cacao powder if you want it to be raw. That's what this is. Or if you're not so concerned about it being totally raw, you just want to make like a dairy-free, gluten-free dessert, you can just use a good organic unsweetened cocoa powder. One of my favorite brands is Green and Black's, and it's just very, very tasty. There's some differences in flavor between raw and roasted cocoa powder. I actually like the taste better of roasted. I mean, it's got that deep, dark, rich taste. Raw cacao powder has a really nice flavor, but it's more subtle. It's not so deep and dark. So just there's some differences there. We're going to use raw cacao powder, though. So we're going to go ahead and use that, and that's going to turn it into chocolate. So I'm just going to add some of that, and I'm not going to add all this. I'm just estimating because I'm using different amounts than in the book to make enough for everybody. But different cocoa powders have slightly different strengths, so you might want to start with like the amount the recipe calls for, taste it, and if you like it really chocolatey, you might add just a little bit more. So let me go ahead and process that. Okay, how long can you store dates? Yeah. So when you buy dates, and it also depends if you're buying them like really fresh, like they're in season, you got them from a farmer's market or something like that. The ones you get in the store usually are a little bit older than that already. I usually keep them, if I'm going to use them within a few weeks, I'll just store them at room temperature. But if it's going to be a while, I'll put them in the refrigerator, and they'll store for up to 2 months in the refrigerator or up to a year in the freezer. Okay. But bring them to room temperature before you use them because they get really hard when they're refrigerated, and they're harder to process. Yeah. What? Oh, is there something not mixing?
Yeah, in the very back.
Let's see. Is that? I think it's okay. Let's see here. It's all right. That's just stuck to the bottom. That's okay. We won't use that in the cake. Okay, so I'm going to actually just taste a little bit of this to make sure we've got enough chocolate in there. Let's see here. That's really good. Okay. I estimated on this because I'm making a larger cake than what you have in the book, but I think in the book, I can just look up the recipe here real quick. Let's see here. Okay, it's 1.5 cups of walnuts, 8 dates, 1/3 cup of cocoa, and then I'm going to add in a minute 2 teaspoons of water. That's it. Yeah, and optional. I'm not going to add vanilla today. It's optional, but you could use a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract.
I react to dates because they're just so high glycemic. Do you find figs as equally texture and taste?
Yeah, figs would be great in this. It's going to be a little more of a subtler taste, not as sweet, but that's okay, and it's going to have more of a fig taste, not as neutral as this, but it's still really good. It's really good. You can use figs. Okay, so that's it. Then finally, I'm just going to add a few drops of water, and that's just going to help bind the cake together. Okay. Okay, there we go. So what's great about this cake is not only do you not need a pan for it or to bake it or anything, and not only do you not need to bake it, you don't even need a pan for it or anything. I'm just going to shape it into a cake right on this plate. So we'll do that for a minute. Wasn't that fast for a chocolate cake? Really fast. You could also make this into brownies. Just press it into a brownie pan. You might add back in some chopped walnuts at the end or some dried cherries or something like that into it and then press it into a pan. And normally I would chill this cake for about 30 minutes before serving it. It'll get even more firm. The flavors are all married together, but we're not going to chill it today and it's still great. But you could do that just to get it more packed in there like for a brownie or something. Okay, so let me just get this out of here carefully. I don't want to waste any of this. So I'm just going to pour it out onto this plate. And some of this, you're right, didn't fully blend, but I'm just going to, it's okay. We'll just kind of mix it in there. It'll be okay. At the very bottom, you're right. I won't put that in. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And actually, in my new book, in Raw for Dessert, there is a recipe for German chocolate cake where it's like a chocolate cake, but you frost it with a coconut pecan frosting, and it's really, really good. Really good. That's in Raw for Dessert. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to shape this into a cake right on the plate. In Raw for Dessert, which is a little more of a gourmet book, I have ways of shaping them that look a little bit, more professional, but that's okay. Okay. And there you have a cake. So now I want to decorate it, and the simplest way to decorate it is just with some fresh berries. Raspberries go really well with chocolate. You could also use sliced strawberries or, other fruits. And I'll talk about some other ways of decorating that in just a minute. So, I could place the berries, very precisely on here, but just to keep things really easy, I'm just going to, pour them on top. Oops, I'm losing some. Okay. Just pour some on top here. The other thing that you could do is, this is a recipe in Raw Food Made Easy, you can make a raspberry sauce by blending together raspberries and a few soaked dates, and you can make like a coulis or a sauce that you could drizzle on the plate and then put a slice of cake on top. You could make this into a black forest cake. You could make some vanilla cashew cream and then top it with that and cherries. We talked about the German chocolate cake. You could make it into brownies. If you want to make a really special birthday cake, you could make 2 of these cakes and then frost one with the raspberry sauce, put the other one on top, and then you could frost the whole thing with a chocolate mousse, and it would be like a double-layer birthday cake. And just to show you this picture here. This chocolate mousse, the only ingredient to make it creamy is avocado. There's no dairy in it. But you don't taste the avocado. It just tastes like a thick, rich, creamy chocolate mousse. And then another one of my favorite, this is great in the summer, raw desserts, this tropical fruit tart. There's no fat in the filling. In fact, there's only one ingredient, mango. And it's just fresh mango blended with dried mango. And you soak the dried mango for a couple minutes so it can blend. And it makes it really thick like this. And it's just it's a coconut crust with a mango filling and fresh fruits on top. So that's like a really nice light one. But here we've got a flourless chocolate cake with fresh raspberries. Wasn't that easy? Okay.